Chapter 6. Travelling deeper into the Earth Kingdom, Aang, Sokka and Katara left Appa just outside a small village and strolled into the centre of the tiny town. Aang had thought about Katara's words and decided that she was right. At the moment, hope was what he had to offer to the defeated and oppressed people of the world. He had made up his mind. He was going to let everyone know the Avatar had returned. As he entered the village, Aang threw back his hood, revealing his tattoos. Townspeople stared at him and pointed. Aang waved and smiled. "Hello," he said. "Hi, hello." The group paused at the courtyard in the oldest section of the town that was in front of a tall, weather-beaten statue of a beautiful woman wearing a kimono and holding a fan. A faded plaque at the base of the statue read, "Avatar Kyoshi." An old man, his shoulders stooped with age, his long hair thin and white, stepped from the crowd that had gathered. He looked right at Aang and bowed respectfully. "This was you when you were born an earthbender 2 lifetimes ago," the old man said. "You came to our village. You played with the children. Avatar Kyoshi loved games." "I do too," said Aang quickly. I still do. The idea of living many lives and being reborn was going to take some getting used to. "When they invaded our village, the Fire Nation forbade us from having anything related to bending," the old man explained. "Now you have inspired us." Aang watched as the people of the village brought out their traditional earthbending ropes and belts, then slipped them on over their tattered clothing. The finely made and beautiful decorated garments seemed to fill them with a newfound spirit. Then one by one, earthbenders unleashed powerful moves. One bender raised his hands over his head and a tall peak of rock sprung up from the earth. Another earthbender whipped her arms forward and an enormous boulder flew through the air, coming to rest on top of the peak the first earthbender had raised. Aang was thrilled that just his presence had filled these people with hope and renewed their fighting spirit. Then a terrifying thought popped into his head. Aang turned and ran from the crowd and quickly caught up with Katara and Sokka on a quiet street on the outskirts of the village. "What is it, Aang?" Katara asked. Aang looked to the sky. "I ran away before they trained me to be the Avatar," he confessed. "I don't know how to bend the other elements." Sokka and Katara looked at each other, stunned by this news. "Why did you run away, Aang?" Katara asked softly. "The day they told me I was the Avatar, they also told me that I couldn't have a family," Aang explained. "They warned me never to fall in love. They said it can't work with the responsibilities of the Avatar." Katara stared at Aang sadly. "Why can't the Avatar have a family?" "I asked that," Aang replied. "They said that's the sacrifice the Avatar always has to make." "OK, so what if we find your teachers to teach you bending?" Sokka asked. His voice was upbeat, hoping to break the gloomy mood that had descended on Aang and his sister. "Which element would you have to learn first?" "Water," replied Aang. "The cycle is air, water, earth and fire." Sokka said thoughtfully, resting his hand under his chin, his favourite thinking position. "We don't have any waterbenders in the Southern Water Tribe, except Katara, of course, but she couldn't teach anybody." "Hey!" Katara shouted, scowling at her brother. "I'm just saying," Sokka whined. "You're like a baby bender." "Hey!" Katara repeated. "But there are really powerful benders in the Northern Water Tribe," Sokka said. "My dad told me about it before he left. They are led by a princess. There will be teachers there for sure, but they're all the way on the other side of the world." "We can get there on Appa," Aang suggested, his spirits starting to lift. "That's what I was thinking," Sokka said. "And maybe we could stop in the villages along the way. start a change in the war in these small villages, like you did in that prison and just now here in the Kyoshi village. That's how you win a war, not just by fighting on the big fronts, but also by building support from the inside. Sokka glanced at Katara and spotted a big grin on her face. "What?" he asked, shrugging. "I didn't know you were so smart," Katara quipped. "Thanks," he said. Then he paused and thought for a moment and added, "I think." And so the group set out on their journey to find Aang a waterbending teacher in the Northern Water Tribe. They flew across the Earth Kingdom on Appa, heading north. Along the way they landed in villages across the Earth Kingdom, where Aang announced that he was back. He got the same reaction everywhere he went. For the first time in years, the villagers grew hopeful that the Fire Nation might actually be defeated. In villages where they encountered Fire Nation soldiers, Aang used his airbending to defeat them and free the village from their grip. In one small town near the northern border of the Earth Kingdom, a group of villagers locked arms to form a circle around Aang, Sokka and Katara, and they joined the group and happily danced around their friend. "Welcome back, Avatar," one villager said. "With your help we can defeat the Fire Nation," shouted another. Aang took in all the joyful spirit of people as they danced around him. The confidence he had once again inspired in a tiny town brought him hope that he really could do what everyone believed he could. When it was time to move on, they made their way to the edge of the village where Appa was waiting. A crowd of villagers waved and shouted as the three friends climbed onto the great sky bison. Three mysterious figures draped in green cloaks and holding metal fans stepped forward from the crowd and stared at Sokka, Katara and Aang. Then they fanned themselves casually and dropped back into the crowd. "What was that about?" Sokka asked. "Does anyone else get the feeling that we're being watched?" Aang ignored the question. He had more pressing things to worry about. "Yip, yip," he cried as Appa took off into the sky. "We've got to get to the Northern Water Tribe as fast as we can," Aang said urgently. Chapter 7. Commander Zeo walked along a path leading through a field of golden grass. Before him he could see the sun setting behind the Fire Lord's magnificent palace, its stones and tile spires rising high into the crimson-tinged sky. Zeo approached a man who was sitting on a bench, looking out at the palace and its vast grounds. Stopping a few feet away, Zeo paused, lowered his head respectfully and waited for the other man to speak first. "Are the stories real or not, Commander?" the seated man asked. "Fire Lord Ozai, we are tracking the stories of the Avatar through the towns," Zeo replied. "There have been many sightings of him. Some say he is just a skinny boy." The Fire Lord looked up at Zeo, who continued to speak. "But my lord, there seems to be a growing rebellion inspired by this boy. How seriously should we take this? He is just one person. The reign of the Avatar is over." Fire Lord Ozai looked back towards his palace. "The Avatar will convince others that the four elements are the same," he said. "He will confine us to a lower place where fire will no longer be the dominant element. Others will feel more powerful, and he will once again be the bridge to the spirit world." "Then this is a Fire Nation issue now," Zeo stated with certainty. "It can no longer simply be about punishing your son, who has demonstrated questionable courage." The Fire Lord said nothing, so Zeo continued. "I believe we should set a trap for the Avatar. He will return to the Northern Air Temple to try to contact the spirit world. I am certain of it. I will send word ahead to have our men wait there. I will start my travel now, if you give me permission." Again the Fire Lord said nothing, and Zeo grew uncomfortable by the extended silence. Forgive my boldness, my lord, but I found the great library when most said it didn't even exist, Zeo said. Because of my actions, we have now learned all the secrets of the spirit world contained within the library. With all due respect, I believe I have earned this command. I have earned the right to find and eliminate the Avatar. The Fire Lord nodded and finally spoke. My son deserves the opportunity to regain his honour. But you may also pursue the Avatar with your army. If you should find him first, then that is simply my son's fate. Commander Zeo bowed deeply. As always, my lord, I think you are being extremely fair. I will leave at once. Then he turned and strode from the palace, a satisfied smirk spreading across his broad face. Prince Zuko and his uncle Ori sat in the tea shop in the Earth Kingdom. Even though the colony was set up by the Fire Nation, Zuko made sure his face was hidden by the hood of his cloak. It was his usual state these days. We're close, uncle, the prince said softly. The Avatar and his friends are moving north. We're catching up to them. Oro took a sip from his steaming cup of jasmine tea and looked at his nephew. There are a lot of pretty girls in this town, Zuko, he said, placing his cup onto the table. You could fall in love here. We could both settle down here and have a good life. Then lowering his voice, he added, we don't have to continue this. Zuko's face, so full of hope a moment ago, hardened. We must continue, uncle, he said. I'll show you why. He called out to a little boy who was walking past them. Hey, little one, come here. The boy stepped up to their table. You look like a smart boy, Zuko said, keeping his face well hidden. Tell me what you know about the prince, the Fire Lord's son. He did something wrong, the boy replied. He spoke out of turn to a general in defence of some of his friends who were going to be sacrificed in a battle, Zuko explained. Then Prince Zuko was sentenced to an Agni duel. The boy continued the story. But when he showed up, it was his father he was to fight. But he would not fight his father. His father mocked him, Zuko continued, a touch of emotion creeping into his voice. His father said, I shall bring your sister up here to beat you. Then the father burned his son to teach him a lesson, the boy said casually, as if he were repeating a history lesson he had learned in school. Trying hard to rein in his rising anger, Zuko then said, What would you feel if you were Prince Zuko? Ashamed? Why? The boy paused and thought about the question for a moment. Because I would have no honour, he replied. Zuko nodded, and the boy hurried off to join his mother. Zuko's hands were shaking with rage as he reached for his teacup. That is why we must catch the Avatar first, uncle, he whispered, and then we can think about pretty girls. Aang and Katara stood at the shore of a sparkling lake beside a forest. Nearby, Sokka tended to a campfire. The group had landed for the night on their way to the Northern Water Tribe. At the edge of the forest, Appa rested from many long days of flying. He curled up into a fuzzy white ball and snored loudly. At the water's edge, Katara pulled a scroll from her bag and unrolled it. On the scroll were drawings of a figure performing waterbending forms. This was a gift from a group of earthbenders. They gave it to me as we were leaving, she explained, as she and Aang looked over the drawings. It might help you as a start to practice your waterbending. Let's try it together. Aang and Katara moved their arms from side to side in a gentle sweeping motion. Try to keep your wrists bent, like in the drawing, Katara said. Let's try again. They repeated the movement, but again Aang failed to correctly bend his wrists. What's wrong, Ang? Katara asked. You seem really distracted today, like your mind really isn't on waterbending. Ang glanced across the lake to the north. I saw those maps Sokka picked up. We're near the Northern Air Temple, he said. Then he turned to look at her. Do you think it would be okay if I just visited there and came back? I'd be back in less than a day. Why do you want to go there? Katara asked. I had a vision at the Southern Air Temple, Ang explained. I talked to a dragon spirit who I think can help us. I believe that if I go to another spiritual place, I can get back to the spirit world and talk to the dragon spirit again. I don't know, Ang, Katara said warily. Let's see what Sokka thinks. A short while later, Katara filled Sokka in on what Ang wanted to do. I'm not sure that's a great idea, Sokka told his sister. We started a rebellion. The Northern Water Tribe is in jeopardy. I think we should try and get there as fast as we can without delay. Try to talk him out of it, okay? Katara vowed to talk to Ang later. That night as Sokka and Katara slept, Ang slipped quietly over to Appa and awakened the slumbering bison, who shook himself and slowly rose to his feet. Then climbing up onto Appa's back, Ang grabbed the reins. Yip, yip, he whispered, and Appa once again took to the sky. The sound of rushing air created by Appa's lift-off woke up Sokka and Katara. I guess your little talk didn't convince him, Sokka said. He should be back in less than a day, Katara explained. You realise the Fire Nation's been following us, Sokka said with concern. If we make a wrong move, they'll catch us, and more importantly, they'll catch him. Then the brother and sister watched as Appa and Ang disappeared into the sky.